Sai Ram, and it's my privilege to be here. It's as I always say, nothing really happens unless Swami wills it to happen. And my journey towards Swami started around 1990, and Swami brings people to his fold in different ways. And for me, before I knew about Swami, I was, quite materialistic, not really interested at all in religion or in spirituality, very capitalist, right? So, I had, when we do medical school in the U.S., you had to go to medical school, you had to do a residency, then you have your fellowship. So it was many, many years. And so I was ready to kind of come out and make a lot of money and try to enjoy life at that time. And it's interesting because that's kind of exactly the time that Swami, wanted to temper my direction, and I got into the fold. So for everybody, there's a different calling card that Swami gives, right? So for me, probably the hospital and cardiac surgery and heart transplantation was the vehicle that he used to bring me into his fold. And as I say, he always would tell me, he called me his coconut tree surgeon because I was tall. He would always hit me in the head. And I think he hit me in the head because I probably have a very thick skull, and he knew that he had to do a lot of work to work on me. But he would always say, you can transplant hearts, but I'm the only one who can actually transform your heart. And he has over the years. It's been a long process just because I've been a very tough student. But I think over the years, I have undergone transformation. I obviously have a lot more to go. But I think if Swami didn't give me that personal attention and didn't give me, many of the circumstances, challenges, interviews, miracles, then I probably would not have even been close to be where I am today.
So hospital was the way that he brought you. Swami always says that, miracles are my visiting cards, and there are so many ways that he brings people. So someone told you about the hospital, and that's how we landed up in Puttaparthi?
Yeah, so we go to a satsang with a center. We were living in outskirts of Philadelphia, and the center was in Doylestown. And it was led by Malati auntie, I would always call her. And, she called me one day and she said, hey, on Tuesday, my uncle is coming. And I don't know if you know, but there's a hospital in Puttaparthi. So remember, those were the days in 1992, right? That was before the internet. That was before Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. So news was very, very slow to spread. So I had no idea that there was a hospital even here. And so she said, he's coming. Why don't you come to satsang on Tuesday? And I told her, I said, auntie, I can't because Tuesday is like my big operating day and I'll never be done in time. She said, well, it's at 5 o'clock and, if Swami wills it, you'll be able to come. So it just so happened that one of my cases got canceled. The other case went very well, went very fast. And I came home early and I asked my wife and she said, Malati said, we can come. So why don't we go? So I go there, and after we had a very short budget, and then Uncle started talking about the super specialty hospital. So it was very hard to even conceive of the fact that, he said, Swami a year earlier said that it would be there, and then exactly in a year we had a full-fledged hospital where we were doing cardiac surgery. So I was listening to all his recollection of all the events of the opening of the hospital. And then at the end, he took me aside and he said, one of the biggest problems they have there is that they don't have enough heart valves. So, the heart has 4 valves, and one of the most common diseases in India is rheumatic heart disease. And it affects, particularly the poorer people. And so there's a lot of people who have rheumatic heart disease. And probably the most common operation we do in India is take care of the valves. So, but the valves, the artificial valves are expensive. And at that time in 1992, none of them were made in India. So you had to import those valves. So he said, listen, we've had a big problem with the supply of valves. And Swami's always said that somebody would bring them. and we don't know who's going to bring them, but maybe that's you because you're a cardiac surgeon. And I told him, I said, I just started practice in cardiac surgery. No one knows who I am. How am I even going to get some of these valves to bring to India? He said, no, just think about it, work on it, and, if Swami wills it, you'll be able to do it. So, the year goes by, and, I asked my boss, this was in April, and my wife Sheila was going to come to India, so I wanted to come with her. And I asked my boss in April, hey, can I take 2 weeks off and go to India? And he said, no, you can't, because I was directing the heart transplant program and there was no other surgeon there. And he said, we can't have you go for 10 days. So I didn't even bother to think about it anymore. And while I was operating one day, there was the representative from one of the valve companies, and I asked him, hey, can you give me some valves? And he goes, well, we don't have valves to give out. And, I'll inquire, but I don't think it's going to work. So I said, fine. So that was in April, and Sheila was going to go in June. Around the end of May, which is about a week and a half before she was going to go, my boss came to my office, and I didn't even ask him. He came in and said, hey, I know you wanted to go to India and take 10 days off, and you've been working so hard, so why don't you go ahead and take 10 days off? So I didn't even have to ask him, and he was giving me 10 dadays off. I said, oh, wow, okay, I'll be able to take time off. And, we went and took tickets for coming to India. And I wasn't even registered in my mind about valves, but then the next day I go to work, and then this rep that I was talking to basically blew me off. He knocked on the door and he said, hey, Dr. J, can you do me a big favor? So I'm looking at him and saying, okay, what favor am I going to do for him? He said that, they had changed the model of the valves, and the new valve was a little bit upgraded, nothing major, but in the US, once the manufacturer sells the valves to a hospital, they can't take it back, or they can't resell it. And so he said, many hospitals have given me all the older valves, and the valves are taking up place in my garage. My wife can't park the car. She's yelling at me. Is there any way you could take these valves and do something with them?
Oh my God.
He says, at that point, he's giving me the valves, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, if you want to give me the valves, surely I'll take them. And so the next day he brings me literally a suitcase full of valves.
Awesome.
So now I have the valves, and we're getting plans to go to India. And his competitor, kind of heard about the fact that, he had given me some valves. So he came in my office 2 days later and he said, hey, I have some valves for you too. Can you take them as well? And can you use them? So I now have like a really full packed suitcase full of valves. And I came to India. We came to Bangalore. I had never been to Puttaparthi before. And I was just being introduced to Swami. So I didn't know any of the routine, the regulations, and how you even get to meet Swami, right? So we went to the hotel, and I said, hey, I have to go to Puttaparthi. And he said, why are you going to go to Puttaparthi? Because no one's going to Puttaparthi. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, Swami's in Whitefield, and so no taxi is going to take you to Puttaparthi because there's no business there in Puttaparthi. When Swami comes here, most of the crowd comes with him. But I told him, I said, listen, I need to go to Puttaparthi. He said, the only way you can go to Puttaparthi, he said, you have to hire that taxi for the whole day. You pay for him to go, and he's going to stay and come back. I said, fine. So we hired this taxi driver. Before that, he said, well, it's the evening, and they're going to have darshan in Whitefield. So why don't you go to Whitefield? And that time, this was 92. So Bangalore was still a very, very pleasant city. There was no traffic. So we just went there. And again, we didn't know what to do. So, we stood online, and then I saw Swami as a small, small orange speck. And, a lot of people, they say the second they see Swami, they have this, rush of energy, or they feel like lightning has struck them, or they just feel it. Honestly, I didn't feel it at that time. I saw Swami as very, very far distance. And then we came back, and then the next day I ended up going to Parthi. At that time, there was no highway. The roads were terrible. I mean, this was just taking for a long, long time. And then, from the main road to the hospital, you're going through desert, right? And then it's like almost like a very unpaved road desert. I'm like, where is this person taking me? It's almost like it was unsafe. And I remember coming up a hill, and then all of a sudden we cross the hill and come down, and you can see this beautiful, beautiful pink building. And it was just very mesmerizing because like in the middle of a desert, you see this, masterpiece. And I thought that was actually the ashram. I didn't, because it was so large. I didn't realize that that was the hospital. And so we were at the front gate, and as, Swami has Sevadal to, everybody's his instrument, right? So Sevadals are an instrument too. And I think Sevadals are meant to cut down your ego. And so we're at the gate, and I'm trying to tell them that I'm a doctor from United States. I'm a cardiac surgeon. I'm showing them my card. And we must have spent about 25 to 30 minutes there arguing with the guy who wouldn't let us through the gate.
Oh, okay. Oh my God.
And then all of a sudden, somehow, somebody passed through and he asked me what was going on. I'm telling him. And he must have gone and talked to the people, because then somebody called to the front gate and they said, okay, let them in. So we came in, and we came in through we stopped off at the Ganesha entrance, right, that temple.
Yeah.
And I will say, doctor was the head of the blood bank there, and he was a very, very charismatic person. And he came out and he goes, you have come home. And I'm looking at him saying, home? This is the first time I've ever been here. And so he related a story where, they didn't have enough valves, and they kept asking Swami, and Swami said, yes, somebody from America is going to come and bring you valves. And 2 days earlier, Swami had just left for Whitefield. And so he had stopped at the hospital, and people had said, well, we don't have any valves left. And he said, don't worry, somebody's going to come with suitcases full of valves for you.
Wow.
And, as Swami, the one thing you learn about Swami is he knows everything, right? He knows the present, he knows the past, and he knows the future. And he would tell you things we don't understand what he would say, because his time period is very different than our time period. If he said tomorrow, it could be your next lifetime, or he could say years and it could be tomorrow. So you just don't know about the lifetime, and you don't know exactly what he means. But, when he said somebody's going to come with suitcases, well, I did come with a suitcase. And, they invited me in. And he said, what do you do? I said, I do transplants. And he said, hey, why don't you give us a talk on transplant? And I had come personally, completely on a personal visit. At that time, you didn't have a computer that would have your slides on. Like right now, I have a computer, I have my phone that has my slides on it. Not at that time. You had to actually carry physical slides. So I remember packing, and I don't remember ever putting the slides into the suitcase. But they opened up the suitcase, and right on top of the suitcase were my slides.
Oh.
And I didn't even know that they were there. And he said, well, you said you came to talk, but here are your slides. I'm like, okay. So we loaded up the slides, and I gave him a talk on transplant. And I think that's how transplant got associated with me, made that association with the hospital, made that association with Swami. Because that was in June. Around September, October, I got a letter. So again, at that time, phone calls were very, very difficult. Either you got like a telegram, but I got a regular letter, and it said from, SSS, IMS. And I opened it up. Dr. Sathya had sent a letter and said that they were having a cardiovascular symposium. And I think that was the second symposium that was going to happen in February of '94. And he wanted to know if I would come and talk about heart transplant. Wow. And my first intention was, well, I didn't really intend to come back to India, because it was less than a year. I had to get time off. And so I told my mom. My mom said, oh, that's the Swami calling you to come. I said, well, no, this is Dr. Sathya calling me to come. He goes, yeah, no one can do that unless Swami tells them to do it, or they would have asked Swami's permission. And so I still wasn't quite sure where I was going to go, but then I decided, okay, I'll go. So, it was odd because Swami had it in February, And he had all those conferences in February. And I always wondered why, but for me at least, that was it ended up being a great time to come because that's the winter time in the U.S. and I could spend some time without having winter. And although I didn't understand why February was a good time, ever since then I've always come around February because it's always been a good time. So Swami even know what a good time was for people to come for the meeting. And so, he had the invitation to come. And it was really interesting because that was the winter time, a lot of snow and ice. And it was really, really icy that day, I remember. And I was going to go directly from work. So I took my luggage to work. And then I was going to take my car to the airport, park my car, go to and catch the plane from Philadelphia. And it was just so icy. And everybody said, I didn't even know how you're going to get to the airport. I got to the airport and they kept canceling flights, right? So you go to the airport and 90% of the flights are canceled. So I called my wife. I said, well, most likely I'm going to just come home because my flight's going to be canceled. And, the program starts next day. So even if I go one day late, I'm going to miss the program. But that was one of the very, very few flights that took off that day. And I landed. I came to Parthi. And it was interesting coming to Parthi too, because I'd never been to Prasanthi Nilayam, right? I'd only been to the hospital, but the hospital only for like 2-3 hours. So I came to Prasanthi Nilayam. I didn't know any of the protocols and things like that. So I was just in the regular line. And then somebody saw me with the placard. And then he said, oh, are you a doctor? I said, yes. He goes, oh, no, you can come this way. So he took me in. And even then, there were a lot of people sitting down. I didn't even know what I needed to do. So I was just sitting down way in the back. And then, Swami came and did this and everybody got up and went to the interview room and I didn't know what to do. So I was just sitting there and Swami allowed everybody in and then he closed the door. Then he opened the door and then he pointed to somebody and he asked, why is he sitting there? And then he invited me in. So I came into the interview room at that. This was before the conference started, the day before the conference started. And, Swami had, everybody was sitting around Swami. I was sitting in the back. And, Swami showed his omnipotence then because, he would talk about cardiac surgery and he would talk about the heart-lung machine and he would give details that people in the room didn't know about the heart-lung machine and, some intricate details on how you operated it and some of the problems that you would have operating it. So, Swami always would give little sparks of omnipotence. If he gave too much of a spark, it would probably be too overwhelming, but he would just let everybody know that, yes, I know everything here. And it was the remarkable thing was he would go around and he would talk about everybody like Donald Ross and all these other surgeons that were there. And he would actually say, this is Dr. Ross, and he did the first valve procedure, and he's written many books, and he's a great doctor. And he was just going from place to place, and it was remarkable that he would know what everybody did. Then, I was in the back, and he said, oh, he's from United States. He's a good doctor. And that's all he said. So I'm like, oh my God, that goes, I understand it. And all these other people are great, right? I mean, they have written the books. I mean, I'm learning from them. And when Swami says I'm a good doctor, that is have a long way to go to get to that stage where I could be a great doctor. And then we had our conference. And then at the end, Swami gave the closing remarks. And I will admit, the problem for me is, when you come to Parthi, like you come the next day right after the US, you get jet lag. And jet lag for me is like 12 hours, right? It's almost like a 12-hour perfect offset. So when, Swami would give these talks at around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, for me, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So you're kind of very, very sleepy. I was kind of nodding on off. And then all of a sudden, Swami said, he was talking about medicine and then he said, well, doctors have to be good doctors, not great doctors. And I woke up and I said, whoa, what does he mean by that? And then he went on and talked about how, great doctors are people who know the books, but good doctors in Swami's mind are people who can listen to patients and take care of patients from a compassionate point of view. But then he talked about how listening to the patient is 50% of the cure. That you can cut and you can do anything as a surgeon, but you have to listen to the patient because you have to listen to their worries, you have to listen to their symptoms, and that'll make you a good doctor. And that, is, again, it's one of these little tidbits that Swami put into my brain. And even these days, when I have a patient who's particularly difficult, has a lot of questions, I might be busy, I could hear Swami's voice in my ear saying, he's a good doctor. And I say, okay, well, Swami says I'm a good doctor. Forget everything else. I'm going to sit down and spend time with the patient. And, for whatever reason, whether it's right or wrong, I always have this reputation of, he's like a weird surgeon because he actually talks to patients and he explains things very well to patients. And that's, again,
Wow.
what's, that's Swami, that Swami's voice that still rings in my ear every single time. So I had an interview with Swami at that time. And, this was after the conference was over, I stayed for an extra day. And then Swami called me for an interview, and, I had heard about the hospital at that time. I'd never actually set foot in the hospital. And I asked Swami, can I come and work in the hospital? And he said, he goes, you don't have to ever ask me permission. He goes, this is your home. And you can work in the hospital anytime you want. So it's funny because, when I first came to Puttaparthi, they said it was home. And now Swami was telling me it's home.
So the first time when you came and gave the waltz, you just gave the waltz and you just went back. You didn't really spend time in the hospital, nothing.
I mean, they gave me a tour of the hospital, but then that was it. I didn't work in the hospital. Yeah, I wasn't intending to do that. I was just purely instrument to bring the valves.
You're the one who just the man with suitcases of walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but now you wanted to work in the hospital. Something had happened within. You wanted to see the hospital.
During the conference, everybody was talking about the hospital, right?
Yes.
And there are other people who had, at that time, Dr. Venugopal,
Yes.
who did the most amount of work in terms of constructing the hospital and bringing his teams. I got to meet with Dr. Venugopal. And so that actually started multiple journeys, right? So when you talk about Swami, it's amazing how interconnected everything is, right? You may do something, and then 15 years later, you find out that you might have influenced somebody who's going to help you now, or, somebody who might have done something to you is going to, be your best friend, partner. It's amazing how these things happen. But I gave the lecture on transplant, and then Dr. Venugopal wanted to start a heart transplant program in India. And so he had gone to Swami to ask, and Swami had said, well, you know the person who gave the talk on transplantation, asked Dr. Jeevanandam. So Dr. Venugopal had asked me. So he came to Philadelphia, and he came for about a week, and he saw 3 transplants. He went on transplant runs, and Dr. Venugopal was an amazing mind because he wrote down every single little detail. Like when I do a transplant, what angle I put the heart in to sew it in and do this and do that. So, and then he asked me for help for starting the transplant program in Ames. And so we sent him all our protocols and medications and everything. And then he sent his whole team, and the team came and they got trained for about 2 weeks. We trained them on LVADs and we trained them on transplant as well. And then that actually led to starting the transplant program at Ames. So the transplant program at Ames was basically our temple program with all the protocols and everything. And he wanted me to come and, participate in the first transplant. But with transplant, you never know when a donor is going to be. So they got a donor. He called me. We had a lot of consultation over the phone. And then he did the first transplant in India. So it's, again, all interconnectedness, right? So
Wow, I think nobody knows that the first heart transplant in India has its story going back to our hospital in Puttaparthi.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It does, yes. It was Dr. Venugopal asking Swami about a heart transplant program, and then Swami talking about my talk, and then Dr. Venugopal coming to Philadelphia, getting trained, and all the protocols.
Wow.
And then he also wanted to start an LVAD program, so their team had come and got trained in LVAD. So LVADs are something that you can plan because the LVAD is just available. And then so he had done a lot of work with the Indian government and with the German government to get the LVADs in Ames. And I think it was like 1995 or 1996. I remember going to Ames, and then we did 3 LVADs in 1 week. And then that started the whole LVAD program in India too. So anyway, so after that first, after the second, so it was the second cardiovascular symposium, my first. Then I came for the third one. And in the third one, I spent a couple of days afterwards actually working in the hospital. And that's the first time I'd actually gone into the hospital with Swami's permission. And then after that, I brought my whole team, and then we would just go to the hospital and work. And then after that, the team at Super Specialty Hospital, they got much, much better. So then I didn't have to bring my team anymore. So then I was just working with them. And it was an evolution, right? So when the hospital first opened up, teams from like Philadelphia, that was my team, or Dr. Venugopal's team from Ames, or Dr. Srivastava's team from Odessa, Texas. I mean, if we came, we would bring our entire team and do a lot of cases that week. And then we would go back. And but there were enough people that came that were continuing to do cases. And then Nilayam joined, and then a lot of the other people, Tushar and everybody else joined. So then, they all got trained by the many people that came here to develop the program intrinsically. And that was Swami's program. And so then I didn't have to bring my team anymore, that you could just come because there was already infrastructure there. And then we would just operate with them. So in the evolution was, so over the 30 years, in the beginning, I would come to do the surgery, and then I would come to train to do the surgery. And now I'm just like an auxiliary. I come in and, they have some difficult cases, some interesting cases that they need some extra guidance or help in, but I almost feel I get in their way now. But, that's just the evolution over the last 30 years and how, the program here has been quite spectacular. I mean, Nilayam Desai was probably the person who's been here, I think, for like 25 or 30 years. She was the director.
Almost 30 years. Yeah.
And, she was, her dedication to Swami is unparalleled. I mean, it was just amazing how there was never a thought about leaving here, and day and night taking care of patients. And I think she became one of the most experienced congenital heart surgeons in the entire world just because of the sheer volume that they do over here. The program here has just been absolutely spectacular, right? Of course, with Swami, nothing is ever short of spectacular. So, the infection rates are very low. People leave the hospital. But, the thing that really attracts me to the hospital is there's the science, and then there's the spirituality, and spirituality meaning love and compassion, right? So the first time you come into the hospital, there isn't a lot of commotion. Everybody's very quiet. There's a lot of people. I mean, lot of people. The amount of volume that they do is unheard of in any other place, like, whether it's in Philadelphia or Chicago or any place else. But it's always with a lot of structure and order and quietness, right? Quietness usually means that things are going on very, very well, right? If things aren't going well, then there's always a lot of noise. And it was amazing how quiet it was, and you can hear the budgeons in the background, and people just smiling in the hospital. So people are sick, and yet they're smiling, right? And that's just a beautiful, beautiful environment to be in. And I remember coming to the operating room, when the hospital was supposed to had been built in a year, right? So Swami in November said it's going to be open in November. But then looking back, there was a lot of movement till Swami got involved. So I don't think the building actually started till like May. So essentially the whole hospital got built in about 6 months. And Swami had, during the graduation, had picked people that might have been English majors or history majors or business majors, and he just told them, you're going to be a perfusionist, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And they all ended up going to Ames and get trained. And obviously, because they're Swami students, they're super, super brilliant. And, so you got great, brilliant minds to become the framework, that entire foundation of that hospital. And so they were all devoted to Swami. And, they were all Swami students. So they were, follow the principles of love. And they didn't follow the principles of love. They emanated love, right? They were, it just came from them naturally. So it wasn't like they had to work at it. And you could just feel that. If you had to work late, there was no complaining. If, that there's a certain amount of that love in the hospital that comes from people who are working there, the patients who are there. And of course, Swami was the leader of everybody. And, everybody says, well, how do you compare this hospital to other hospitals around the world? So, first of all, no other hospital that I know of gives 100% free care. I mean, there are hospitals that say, we won't charge you, but we will charge the insurance company, or, they have donations that come in. They don't charge the patient. They get money somehow for the patient, but they don't charge the patient. Well, in Swami's hospitals, there's no billing department. There's no finance. There's no bill. And so it's, I don't think that actually exists in any other hospital. I mean, maybe somebody has copied Swami's hospital, but at that time, I don't think any hospital like that exists. And so that's one thing that makes it unique. I think the other thing that makes it unique is the amount of just dedication and love, right? Because people aren't doing it as a job. They're doing it because they're dedicated to Swami. And that, you can feel it. And that love means that there's much more cooperation with everybody. There is much less arguments. Everybody's there for one reason, and that reason is because Swami's put them there to take care of a patient. The amount of ego that you have with all the people working is much, much less than you would have with someplace else, right? There's no politics because no one's trying to backstab somebody to improve. It's all for the one goal of making patients better and performing Swami's mission. So, that is incomparable, right? You can never really have a hospital that has that type of those type of people working there with that type of love. And people say, can you compare this hospital to other hospitals? And I would turn around and say, can you compare any other hospital to this hospital? Now, yes, I mean, there are things that, we don't do here, like, maybe a heart transplant or putting in LVADs and things like that. But for the reason that Swami built the hospital, which is to take care of the bulk of the disease for the poor people, it does a remarkable job. And, we've helped, hundreds of thousands of patients. And, the patients are also very grateful because, they're grateful to Swami, they're grateful to the doctors, and because of that, you can feel their love as well. So there's just a certain amount of warmth and love that you get in that hospital that you just never get anyplace else.
In fact, more than 60% of the patients treated in Swami's hospital don't earn even $1 a day. And it is not just the poor who come to the hospital. You have people who have the money, who are affluent, also come to the hospital because they believe that, if there is a hospital where I can be cured, or I want to get cured, or I'm sure I will get cured, then it is this hospital, So that's the kind of feeling that a lot of people have.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of patients that we take care of, but we don't even know who they are, right? We have no idea what their means are or whatever. And yeah, we've taken care of some important. We've taken care of all of Swami's children, right, from the entire spectrum. But it is interesting because now, 30 years later, as people age, people change. And I will say, even with that change, now you have people who are coming to work who might never have seen Swami, right? They were not personally guided. Swami is here; he is everywhere, but there was difference when he was there personally, holding your hand or guiding your hand. I still see that love, right? It's different. Just because I've known everybody else for 30 years, but now I go and many of them are starting to retire and not working there, and you see new people, but you still see that that mission of helping patients and making sure that they're well. So, it's that amount, that aura that Swami's put in that hospital still exists, and it's really, really refreshing.
Now the hospital is known for so many reasons, and today we are having the World Heart Day celebrated in Puttaparthi, and I think it's so there are things that probably would have never imagined are happening, isn't it?
Yep. I mean, but Swami knew that would happen. But all these things happened 30 years later, and we had some talks today with artificial intelligence, and they're developing algorithms, they're developing predictive models that are specific for Indians, right? Because normally you look at these models, they're based in where a lot of the data is able to be acquired and where all the IT people are, which is usually Europe or US or Japan, Korea. But now all those models are coming to India. And really, a lot of them are just emanating from Bangalore because, Bangalore is close to technology, colleges, and all the high-tech people that are around Bangalore. And they're really leveraged that to be able to be on the cutting edge of AI. So some of the talks today were really, really impressive on what they were able to do.
So this conference that's going on now will help not only to create awareness about this hospital with new doctors, also perhaps bring in different kind of people and people with different kind of expertise to this hospital to join this mission, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, again, Swami has different reasons why he has the conference, right? So for me, I never sit through preventive cardiology talks and lectures, right? So I always say, when you take a step towards Swami, he'll take 5 steps towards you, right? So that's exactly, I come to these meetings and I learn about preventive cardiology. I heard about primordial cardiology. So these are topics that I generally won't hear. So to me, I'm learning a lot from the conference. Then other people learn from, the different things that we talk about. And I think then people also learn about what are new and innovative things that are being able to be done in Swami's hospital. And because it's the World Heart Day, this is actually being broadcast around the world. So it is an incredible way to disseminate Swami's work all worldwide.
And even as we talk about the healing of the physical heart, we know that once you come to Bhagwan, he starts ensuring that you cooperate as he operates on you. So how was that experience of Bhagwan working on you? And when you look at yourself now, vis-a-vis 1993, 1994, the person that you were and the person that you are now, and the surgeries that Bhagwan has done to remake you, how is that experience like, and how is that journey?
So it's a very interesting journey, right? Because I think when you start on the journey, you don't know you're on the journey. And it's a process. And 20 years or 30 years later, I think you appreciate that process, you understand that process much more than when you're actually in the process. And for me, he's used things like heart valves to get me to come to Puttaparthi, right? He's used transplantation, as he says, to transform my heart. And it's using, at that stage in my life, I wasn't a spiritual person. I wouldn't even understand spirituality. And Swami knew that, right? So he gave me very concrete examples, miracles, manifestations, things that he would say, and all that combined to get me into his fold. And then once he gets you into the fold, then he withdraws a little bit and allows you to mature and to develop on your own, right? So to me, like, the first time I came here was 94 to about 2005. That was the intense amount of very direct interactions with Swami, right? Bracelets that were manifested, rings that were manifested. He would give me direction about, leave temple, go to University of Chicago. I mean, those were very, very direct things that he would do. 2005, kind of had my final interview with Swami. It's the one I videotaped. And after that, we never really had a personal interview with Swami. After that, it was all in the veranda. We would talk, or he would hold my hand, or he would say something to me in the veranda, but nothing that was that personal talk. But that was also the time that I started to grow, because before, when every time I would come to Parthi, yes, we would have that week, but instead of thinking spiritually, the only thing I would think about is when am I going to get my interview with Swami so I can ask him all these questions and I could do this and do that. And so the whole week was, there was work in the hospital, and then there was, when is Swami going to give you the interview, right? And so once I kind of knew that Swami wasn't giving me interviews anymore, then it was, okay, let's get us a glimpse of Swami. Let's just get his blessing. But then now it's time to evolve. So, it kind of moved from the phase from 94 to 2005. And then that 2005 phase to 2011 till he left the physical form. And then after he left the physical form, then it takes on to the next level, because now you can't even see him. And now it's, he's more of a force or a concept, or he's within you, as opposed to being able to see the physical form. So it is a process. There were many individual events that happened during that process that got me to understand things about universality, about ego. The one thing that Swami, I think, would always do is, at least every time he comes, there's one lesson on ego. It's like, as he said, I was this coconut tree. I think it was like looking to chop the coconut tree's ego down a little bit every single time. And then, then there were things that he would say that you would understand later, like things about like death, right? So I would talk, I had an interview. I had a particularly like, we do a lot of transplants. You take very, very sick people. Like this meeting was all about preventive cardiology. I'm on the other spectrum, right? Preventive is on one side. I'm on the spectrum of, okay, person now has, nothing else. There's no other things that we can do till we do something major like heart surgery on them. And, if you take on very difficult cases, sometimes people die. That's just a natural progression. But, every time somebody dies, it takes a little bit of my heart away as well. And so I had that discussion with Swami in an interview, and I asked Swami, I said, Swami, we do all these cases and these people die. And he said, you do the work. Whether somebody lives or dies, that's not on you. That is my responsibility. That's my decision, or that's me. And he says, you operate with your hands, and then I use my hands on people as well. And so, learning so that's a concept. Before that, I was like, it's me. I'm doing this transplant. I'm choosing this. I'm doing that. And, that one conversation got me onto the concept of, no, it's not me, it's him. And I'm part of a mission or a play, or that's my dharma, that's my work that I need to do, and I need to do it the best I can, but I can't expect a outcome, because that outcome is ultimately in Swami's hands. And that's a big transformation. And I would say it's still ongoing, right? So I'm much better than I was before, but still, when I lose a patient, I always say, okay, what could I do better? I think that's what Swami would want me to do. He would want me to become a better surgeon. That person died. Yes, maybe that was his karma. That was Swami's decision. That person died. But what do I learn from that person dying that's going to make me into a much better surgeon? And I know that has evolved and has made me better and better. And that's all Swami's transformation.
I mean, you are known for being a doctor who takes on cases which no one else will take, the most complicated and quote-unquote inoperable cases you try to attempt by Swami's grace. But I think this learning is so important, isn't it? This is, in fact, one of the chief messages of the Bhagavad Gita, where you do your work and you leave the results in the hands of God. You have your control only. I mean, your job is to only do the work, just like Krishna told Arjuna. And then what happens is absolutely beyond you, and it's nothing of your concern. I think while this probably has given you a lot of peace and strength, at the same time, it has also helped you not to take the successes also into your head, isn't it? Be it success or a failure.
Yes, I think it's two ways, right? So to me, when something successful happens, it's easy for me to say it's Swami's grace. That is Swami's will.
Wow.
And I would not have, in the beginning, if there was success, it was because of me. Now when there's success, it's because of Swami. And that transition is easier. The transition that's harder is, let's say I do something and somebody dies, and then it's like, okay, that's, what could I do differently?
Yes.
And I think Swami would want me to be that way, right? He would want to say, okay,
yes.
What could you learn from this to be better? But then understand that this person died for a reason, and this person, that death is, again, it's Swami's responsibility. It's hard for me to say it's Swami that this person died, because you don't want to equate anything bad with Swami. But Swami has said, there's no such thing as good or bad.
Yeah.
They're all his decisions, and there are karma, there are all these cosmic forces that, we're just a small part of. But it's hard to attribute a bad outcome to Swami. It's much easier to attribute a good outcome. Mm-hmm. But, again, that is the evolution of the process, right? But, when you talk about taking on difficult cases, we've done a lot of firsts at the University of Chicago. I mean, I have an unbelievable team. Swami surrounded me with, geniuses. And, we did the first successful heart, liver, and kidney transplant. Yes. That was in 1999. And, before that, one was attempted, and that person, failed very quickly. And Dr. Starzl, who was the like a pioneer when it comes to a transplant, especially liver transplant, had basically written an editorial, said this should never be done before. This should be never done again, because no human could actually withstand all the operation that's needed. Well, when you talk about, we had a patient who happened to have 3 organs, and we had planned it all out, and we had decided that we were going to be able to help them. And and the question is, what gave me the confidence? So I call it psi confidence, right? So I know that if that wasn't the thing that I should do, then Swami would somehow come and prevent that from happening, right? And I know that if I'm doing something with a pure heart, and not because of an ego, but because I want to actually help that patient, and the Swami wills it, that will happen. And so that gives you that extra confidence. Now, that was one example. Sometimes we do patients who refuse to take blood. They're Jehovah's Witnesses, and, they would rather die than take blood. I don't believe in their beliefs, but Swami's always said you should respect people. And so I respect their beliefs. And we get people from all over the world who come because other people said, "Oh, this is just impossible to do without blood." And we take them on, and we get them done. And a lot of it is because, again, Swami, I always pray to Swami. I said, okay, I'm going to do the best I can, but the outcome is in your hands. And, the patients feel the same way as well. So when I talk to a patient, there are some patients who say, how many of these cases have you done? What's your mortality rate? This person says their mortality rate is 1.6%, and you're saying yours is 1.7%. So should I go to the 1.6%? And those people, they always have all these complications. Then there are people who come who say, listen, this is my belief, but I also believe in God. Their God is the same as our Swami. And they're like, you do the best I can, and we'll all pray. And if God wills it, Jehovah, if God wills it, then it will happen. And, they do remarkably well. All you have to do is put your belief in God, and, he will guide whoever needs to be there to help you. And that's how I feel. I mean, you can feel, before I do any patient, I will pray to Swami, and, I'll tell them that, it's not for me. He has to protect that patient. And if this is not the right thing to do, then, give me a sign that, it's going to be canceled or something. And, sometimes, the patient will develop a fever in the last minute, and we'll end up canceling the case, and then something different will happen to the patient. So Swami's always protected the patients that way. He's kind of protected them from me, but I could feel that divine presence. And so that gives you the confidence to do things, because, if he's allowing you to do it, then most likely, he's giving you permission to do it. And when Swami gives you permission, it's going to work. And so that gives you that side confidence to do some of these things. So it's not, people say, oh my God, how do you do that? It goes, I don't do it. It's like Swami's guiding you, and he's almost giving you the permission to do it.
So I think so that way, more and more when you feel that, okay, I'm not the doer, and more when you feel that, Swami, you are in charge, then I think automatically for yourself, okay, this is what is happening, this is definitely his will. So you just feel more and more like an instrument. Then I think to that extent, you are happier, you are lighter, and you're okay with whatever is outcome, because you're just an instrument.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that is in theory how it is, but unfortunately in medicine, right? So, Swami says he will take the final decision, or the final result is his, but he also puts the responsibility on you for doing the best you can. And so, yes, when I take on a difficult case, I don't sleep the night before. I'm always playing in my mind. I said, okay, if we do this and this happens, what's plan A? What's plan B? What's plan C? So it's not like you're going into it saying, okay, I'm just free and Swami just take it over, right? It's like, if you take an exam, you have to go prepared for the exam, because Swami's not going to take that exam for you. So I think, in a sense, there is stress, but it's the stress in the preparation, and in the stress in the fact that, I know that I'm Swami's instrument, but this instrument needs to perform as well. And so, but there is, whether things go good or bad, knowing that the final decision is not yours, but it's Swami's decision. Oh, the other day, I think I did 5 transplants in 6 days plus 4 other cases, right? So it was like continuous. We're just working, and everybody's like, why are you doing this to yourself? So I was thinking to myself, I said, God gives you energy, God gives you purpose. And if Swami didn't want me to, I told my wife, I said, if Swami decided I'm not supposed to do these cases, then he will somehow cancel the cases. When he's giving you these cases to do, and you have an opportunity to help people and save their lives, then it's not your body, right? It's almost like, Swami can take care of you. And when Swami decides then it's enough and you can't do it, then you don't have that responsibility. So as long as I have that responsibility, I'll enjoy it, because it's like Swami, giving you the work. If Swami's giving you the work, he's not going to give you work that you can't do. So that means that no matter what hurts or what pains or your back aches, you do it because, he's giving you the privilege of helping people.
In fact, Swami used to also say, I just need your availability. If you're available, if your availability is there, I will put that ability in you.
Ah, yes. That's very well said.
And I think that is what happens. You just say, Swami, I'm available. Make use of me, and then he fills you with that inspiration, knowledge, skill, and everything. And ultimately, the joy also is ours. We feel so happy that Swami used us, and for the betterment of someone. I think that fulfillment, that joy is something else, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, you really. I mean, there is nothing better in life when you have a patient who looks like they're going to die, and with Swami's grace, you help them, and then they're walking out of the hospital, or they're giving you a hug, or they want to take a picture with you, or you get their attention. It's not that it's me, but they get to spend time with their family. They get to see their grandchildren. They get to see graduations. That is a very special responsibility and a gift that Swami's given to doctors and to surgeons. And that's why I say work is not work. Work's a privilege, and it's a privilege that he's given us.
And that's why in Sanskrit it is said, Vaidyo Narayano Hari, which means the Vaidya, the doctor, is verily God. Because, for people, when you are able to give back life, when it almost seems like there's no life, for people, doctors are gods. And I think those are truly very, very divine moments, I guess, when you see something like that. And I think no other joy, no sacrifice, you don't even want to call what you missed as sacrifice. You might have missed a vacation, you might have missed something, but I think that is the greatest joy and greatest sense of fulfillment that one can have.
It is amazing. It's an amazing feeling, but you have to be careful, right? Because if I didn't have Swami, then you actually think you are God, and then you have an ego problem,
Yes.
right? And then you become super confident, and
Yes.
then you go off on the rail, right?
Yes.
And I know that would have been me, and Swami caught me from going off the rails, brought me back onto the highway, and has grounded me, right? So, I know there's joy, but then there's also sorrow. So you always have to be in the middle. You have to have equanimity. And that balance is Swami.
Awesome. And that is what is the central message of the Bhagavad Gita. So, Swami didn't, I have to ask you to read the Bhagavad Gita, but you just with the interaction that he has had and the kind of life experiences that he has given you, he has ensured that you practice the Bhagavad Gita in action in the operation theater.
It's very interesting you should say that, because I always feel like a fraud, because I'm not a learned person, right? I mean, people can quote the scriptures and quote this and quote that, and I've spent my life more with science than I have with scriptures, right? And I come place like Puttaparthi, and people can, like, you have beautiful Veda singing, you have this and you have that, and I feel like I'm kind of a nobody. But it's funny that you should say that. Yeah. Like, when I read the Bhagavad Gita, I've read like the summaries, I haven't written the whole thing. But that's the transformation that Swami can do, right? So, instead of me reading it, he's making me live it.
Yeah. No, in fact, talking about Bhagavad Gita, Swami used to say the essence of Bhagavad Gita is there in the first and last word. The first word of Bhagavad Gita starts with dharma, and the last word is mama. So Swami says, just join these two words. It means mama dharma, which means my duty. So I say the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is nothing but just do your duty. And that's what you're doing. And you're doing to the best of your ability, and trying to do as much as possible without ego, and leaving the rest result to God. And I think there is nothing, and in a spirit of equanimity. I think that is what is Bhagavad Gita. Everything covered. Wow.
So really that's awesome. The transformation. And it's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's never, I know it will never be done, but I just whenever I give a retreat, we say, people will say, well, this person has known Swami since they was young, or this person did that, or this person did that. And it's like the fact that we know about Swami is because he has given us the privilege of knowing about Swami, right? There's 8 billion people, 7 billion people on earth, and a very small fraction know about Swami and actually believe in Swami and are guided by Swami. And that's a very incredible gift that Swami has given us that we should cherish and use. It's that's very, very special that he's selected people like you or to me to be in his fold, and we must have done something right before.
Yeah. No, in fact, when you think about it now, the people who have actually now seen Swami and interacted with Swami, it's a microscopic minority now.
Yes.
As the years go by, now you have generations of students in Swami's university who have never seen Swami, and as you said, now you have doctors and medical professionals, and that's what will happen now. So you have now generations of students and devotees and professionals who are in Swami's mission directly, indirectly, but they have never seen Swami.
And I always say, they're like incredible devotees,
yes.
Right? Because Swami had to be there personally, physically, slap me in the head and hold my hand through the journey. I don't think I could have ever made that journey without Swami there. But look at all the incredible students, and I look at Bal classes, and they see Swami as a concept, and for them to follow his principles with him just being a concept is like much higher level than me. I mean, that's truly is pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, their connect with Swami is so strong. They feel him as that overriding power, and they believe in it because they've begun their journey with that basis, on that principle. Probably many. When Bhagwan was physically there, the journey didn't begin like that. As you're saying, when you saw him, you didn't feel that he was anything divine, or, you just started off as a normal human being, and then slowly he had to work, on our hearts. But
it's really interesting, right? So because when I started coming to Swami's fold, I'd always be jealous of people who said, oh yeah, when I was little, Swami used to come to our house and feed me. Or, Swami used to... we used to eat together or something like that.
Travel in the car.
Traveling in the car, going to Kodaikanal, Uti. Yeah. And now, so at that time, you kind of feel jealous of those people. Mm-hmm. Now I'm, we're aging breed. Let's put it that way. The aging breed of the people who have had interactions with Swami.
Yes.
So I've become one of them.
Yeah. And truly, you can only think about Swami and be grateful, as you're saying, that he allowed us to know him, allowed us to love him, and it is his grace that he gave us the chance to even think of him.
Yes.
And also, I guess, once Bhagwan came into your life and this shift kind of happened from ego self to, more a spiritual self, from science to moving on to spirituality, you would have also become more open to these ideas of spirituality, ideas of religion, faith and prayer and meditation and all of these concepts, which are kind of part of holistic healing, and I think that's what also one of the things going on in the conference. We are talking about healing, and we are bringing in all these aspects of healing which encompass making a person a true human being and also contribute to healing in all its dimensions. So probably you would have also seen the effect of all of this in the healing of patients, of faith, of prayer, meditation, from your experience.
It's funny. I think we were talking, and Swami originally, when he built the hospital, he said, like the job is actually completely done if there's nobody in the hospital, right? Which means that you've taken care of them early on, and so they don't even get sick.
Correct. And Swami wanted that,
right? So that's kind of the ideal healthcare is to take care of people so they don't even get sick.
They don't even get sick. Yes.
And in the conference today, they were talking about primordial medicine, which is, looking at the environment and stress and everything else, taking care of that. So you don't even have to have preventive medicine. And, that obviously is going to be very, very hard to accomplish. But, you talk about things like spirituality and being grounded. So I see that a lot in our patients, right? So even now, I'll see a patient is be very, very nervous and anxious. And I'll tell them, I said, listen, you're not going to do well if you're that anxious. You have to learn how to relax because you have a problem. We can fix the problem. But unless you relax and you understand and have the confidence that we're going to fix your problem, it's never going to work. And so I truly believe that people come into the operating room like super stressed out. They will have all type of complications and problems. So even now, like the other day on Wednesday, I was talking to somebody who was like very, very stressed. I said, listen, before I operate on you, I need you to calm yourself down. So either you need to see a psychiatrist, or better yet, you need to go and do some meditation and take some deep breaths and learn how to calm yourself down before we operate on you. And then when I said that, he said, no, doc, I need to have the surgery. I said, yes, you need to have the surgery, but you need to do well after the surgery as well. So just take a little while, take some deep breaths, and find somebody to take you into that pathway where you're not so nervous. And he called back in a couple of days. He said, well, I'm much calmer now. I'm doing some breathing exercises. I haven't gone to any type of meditation class or anything, but I'm ready to have a procedure. And I said, okay, you sound a lot better now than you did then. So I do believe that prayer, I think prayer, the fact that you're now asking the divine for assistance and help decreases stress. I think anything you can do to decrease stress prolongs life and cures diseases. And if you do have a disease and you have to have surgery, makes the surgery go a lot better. So I think all the things that we talk about, devotion, meditation, taking deep breaths, all those things decrease stress. And which was the theme of the conference today, right? It was a lot about stress. There's physiological stress, there's psychological stress, but just decreasing stress probably relieves a lot more of the disorders than we ever think possible.
And I think that is what works very beautifully in our hospital. People, once they come here, they don't feel stressed, they feel blessed because they feel they have come to not a hospital, but a temple. And I think that is the first step in them getting better.
Yes.
And after the doctors have to do just their job, already the healing has started.
And you could feel that in the hospital. I mean, you could just, when you make rounds, you can see all the patients their eyes are brighter. Whether it's stress or love and of course, also Swami's taking care of them as well. So that always helps.
Yes, absolutely. I think the hospital ambience is also such, the hospital welcomes everyone. Physical structure of the hospital also is like two arms welcoming everyone. Yes. So and I think everybody feels that way. And it's beautiful that, from day one, the hospital continues in that spirit. They say that with little faith, you can go to heaven, but with great faith, heaven will come to you. And I think probably you would have seen such things, isn't it? People have great faith and they are calmer and everything goes on better than you would have expected or they would have expected, right?
A lot of times we'll operate on somebody who's really sick and they may be 85 years old. And people are like, oh, why are we even doing that? And you talk to the patient and the patient like, listen, doc, you do the best you can. I'm confident that I'm going to do well. I have faith in God. I'll pray. And, you'll be surprised how well I'm going to do. And it's remarkable how well they do,
Wow.
I mean, we've had some people like 85 years old, they walk out of the hospital in 4 or 5 days after major surgery, right? And the same token, you can have a 45-year-old who doesn't believe that way and is agitated, and they all have the complications. But we certainly see the power of prayer. We see the power of belief, and we can see the power of devotion, and all those really do make people better.
And I guess every now and then you feel the unseen hand of God. You've seen and experienced the unseen hand of God, perhaps sometimes very palpably, very visibly, very strongly, and sometimes subtly, isn't it? All the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing you learn about spirituality is connectivity, right? So everything is connected.
Yes.
And
so that is Wi-Fi and this is sci-fi.
One story I love telling is, when we do transplantation, we have to manage the donors. And a lot of the times the donors are not great when we start, and we manage them, make them better. And sometimes when the donors are not great, no one wants the hearts, right? So, one time a coordinator called me up and he said, "Hey, Dr. J, do you want this heart? No one else wants it. You can have it for whoever you want if you can make it work." So I spent 12 hours of sleepless night making it all work. And, the next day the heart was fine, it looked good. And I told the patient, I'm going to bring my, I had already called my recipient. So I said, "Okay, when can we do the transplant?" And she said, "Well, we changed the procurement people. So the new person came on board, saw that this was a good heart. So they put it through the computer again. And then somebody else took the heart." And I nearly lost my mind. I said, "Okay, so I worked for 12 hours, got this heart to be good. I did it to get it for my patient. And now you're telling me I can't get this heart." And she says, "Yeah, sorry, we ran the list and that's kind of the rules." And I said, "Well, you guys promised me the heart." And he goes, "Oh, well, can't do anything about it." So, I was still angry or whatever, but then eventually you forget about it. And then about 2 weeks later, we had a meeting. So in Chicago, we have a meeting with all the heart failure people who do transplants. And normally I sit at the surgeon's table, but I was really late. So I couldn't sit at the surgeon's table. They were occupied. I sat with the cardiologist. I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my God, this is going to be torture for the next hour or so," And so they were all talking. And one of the cardiologists said, "When you do transplantation, you always end up with some miracles." And everybody's like rolling eyes. I go, "What are you talking about?" And she was talking about, a patient who was truly ill. So that my patient wasn't at home and we're going to bring him in, but this patient was in the hospital. They thought that patient had a couple of hours to live. And in that era, they didn't have a lot of support they can give the patient because the patient was on maximum amount of medication to, pump the last beat they can get out of the heart. And because he had congenital heart disease, he only had one ventricle. He didn't have two ventricles. So it isn't like you could do anything for him. And he said, we got an offer. That heart was just absolutely terrible. And we thought this guy was going to die. We're doing his last rites. And the next day morning, they called back and the heart looked great. And we did the transplant and the guy's absolutely fine. It was it's an unbelievable miracle. Don't know what happened to that heart, but that heart came from being very, very bad to becoming very, very good. And I looked at that and said, so Swami was just using me as an instrument to get that heart to be good, to save this person's life.
Wow.
Right? I don't know that person. I will never meet that person. But in the whole cosmic world of interconnectivity, that person will never know that the work that we did was what got him that heart. And that's how Swami works. And think about it, right? He also made me late for the meeting so I can only sit in one spot. And that's where the conversation started. Because otherwise I would have never known about that. Because nowadays, if that ever happened, my first thought is it's happening for a reason. And if it's happening for a reason, Swami's behind it. He's there. He's doing it for a reason. Just let it go and accept whatever the consequences are.
Wow. I think that is, again, a very, very deep spiritual lesson where, whatever happens, to always say that this is for my good, this is happening for a purpose. And I think that always keeps you at calm no matter what happens. And you know that it's divine design ultimately. And I think that's a very beautiful way to live.
I need to work on it even more. I would say I still get agitated, especially at work, right? So when you're in party, everything's a little bit different. As I always say, you leave the walls of party and you have to go to the outside world, then it's very different than you're in party. I mean, party is like such a beautiful, they call it the abode of peace, right? And it's named that way for a reason. But yeah, I mean, it's the journey. And the journey's not over yet. And I have a lot more to learn. But at least with Swami, he's guiding me through it. And, I do react sometimes, but then I react and then I could bring myself back down.
Yes, very quickly.
I think ultimately, I want to be at a stage where I don't even have to react.
Yes.
But that's the next stage. So we'll take it a stage at a time. Swami still has some work to do.
Your most cherished moment with Swami?
So it was in 2010 or 2011. So 2010, Swami had a meeting and we all came. 2011, I usually come in February to work in the hospital. So I came in February to work in the hospital. And at that time, Swami really was not giving any interviews. He was barely coming out to give darshan, either in the morning or the evening. I think he'd only come out like once or twice a week and be very erratic timing. And it was Friday, and I was going to go back that Friday night, take the plane off Saturday morning to go back because they weren't operating on Saturday. And so it was Friday, and I like going to the bhajan hall a little bit early, just kind of sit there and meditate. So I went pretty early, like around 6:30, something like that. And I was sitting there, and then Swami actually came very, very early that day. And he came to the bhajan hall, and for a minute it was just me and him, and he looked at me and he smiled and he blessed me, and then he went. And then that evening I came back, and I always like to have kind of final darshan with Swami before I go back to Chicago. And we were there late. Swami hadn't come out. It was like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I was getting up to go, and somebody next to me said, "Where you? What time do you have to leave?" I said, "Well, I have to leave around 11 o'clock, midnight." He goes, "And you're just going to go to your room. Why don't you just stay here? Maybe Swami will come back later." And I said, "But he never comes this late." He goes, "You never know. It's Swami. Sometimes he will." So I stayed, and around 9 o'clock, actually, there was a lot of commotion. Swami came out in his car. And he went and he went around. He had the window up, but he was just blessing everybody. Then he came to the veranda and he put the window down. And then I asked, I had asked Swami to see me, and he said, "Yes, come." And then he held my hand, and he held my hand. I mean, he's done that sometimes. Sometimes he's held my shoulder, hit me in the head. But this time he just kind of held my hand. He held my hand with both his hands, and he was just kind of caressing my hand. And he said, "Banguru," he said, "everything will be okay." And because my wife was ill at that time. So, I had asked him for my wife. And, he kind of said, he was rubbing my hands, and he said, "You don't need me." He goes, "You will take care of her." And he held his hands, and they moved the car because he was just staying for a long time. But he wouldn't let go of my hand. So he just kept holding my hand. And I walked with him like almost halfway down the ramp, and eventually he let go. And that was the kind of the longest I'd held on to Swami's hands. And that was the last time I actually saw Swami, because then, he had this Mahasamadhi. So, that final moment was very special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, he just did not want to leave your hand, and he just wanted you to always know that he will never leave your hand no matter what. And your hands are his hands.
Yep. And we have to realize that, right? We're all his instruments. And he's told that repeatedly to everybody. your job is so important. I mean, you're getting his message out to people. Everybody's job's important. I in the hospital, I tell the janitors, I mean, you're cleaning the room, but if you don't clean the room properly, then this person's going to die. Or if you don't clean the room fast and we have an emergency, the time's going to be wasted, you're going to die. So every single person is just so important in Swami's mission. We all have our dharma, we have our work to do. We're his instruments, and we need to realize that we need to do his work. And I think if we all do his work, then the world will be a nice place.
Yeah, the world will become Prasanthi Nilayam. Beautifully. Okay, so as we conclude, what are you taking from Prasanthi Nilayam this time back to Chicago?
Well, I came in a little agitated, disturbed about work and thinking about a lot of things. And you know what? I take away this interview because you have made me revisit my time with Swami. I've reconnected with Swami. I'm sure this was Swami's plan for me to talk about this. And, he has me go to retreats every once in a while to just kind of rehash. It's kind of like a refresher course, It's like in medical terms, we have CMEs, continuing medical education. This is my continuing medical education.
Continuing spiritual education.
Yes, CSC, continued spiritual education. It's kind of like going through all the things that he's done in my life to get to me to where I am. But every once in a while, you kind of forget it, and you need to have rehashing. So, I think that's special. I was wondering, I came here for one day for the conference, right? So, I come from the long distance to come for I'm here for a day and a half and then go back. And, but Swami, always gives me 10 times more than whatever I bring. I mean, I gave a little talk, that was not a big deal, but, I learned a lot about, things like hypertension or lipids that I normally would not even know about. So I learned a lot from a medical perspective. And talking to you, I have rekindled my spiritual perspective, and can't ask for more.
Bhagwan continues to operate on us, refine us, reshape us, and ensure that we continue to grow till we reach the stage where there is no ego.
Yes.
And I think that's the very beautiful journey. And whatever you have shared, it's really a treasure for us. Really grateful to you.
Om Sai Ram.
Sai Ram.